Welcome to Akhand Vidyashram, the first institute of impeccable wisdom, the walking, talking encyclopedia. Cardiac output, the spiritual science of cardiac output. My mission, the impeccable wisdom, knowing which everything is fully known. My greatest discovery, Divyank, the divine design of nature, with which the perfect objects are designed and created. Divyank is the reward of 60 years of integrated education. Impeccable wisdom is enlightening, and integrated knowledge is empowering. Now let's understand the different definitions which are associated with cardiac output. Cardiac means heart, output means amount of blood which is pumped out of the heart every minute. Now let's understand the first concept which comes to my mind is end diastolic volume, the amount of blood in the heart ventricle after full relaxation of the heart, and it is the perfect value is 120 ml is the value. This is derived based on Divyank. I am not taking a copy of what others are talking. I am talking of the impeccable wisdom derived with Divyank ratio, Divyank sequence, Divyank infinity. As systolic blood pressure is 120 millimeter of mercury, similarly end diastolic volume in the heart is also 120 ml. You call it coincidence or you call it divine will, but that is reality. Second concept which comes to my mind is called stroke volume, amount of blood pumped by each ventricle during the ventricular contraction. Perfect value is 74 ml. Third concept is end stroke volume, amount of blood in the ventricle after the contraction of the ventricle. When ventricle pushed all the blood out whatever they can put, the remaining will be 46, and that is equivalent to pulse pressure, and diastolic blood pressure is 74 ml. So diastolic blood pressure is 74 millimeter of mercury and stroke volume is 74 ml of blood. Fourth thing which comes to mind is ejection fraction. The stroke volume, which is 74, divided by the end diastolic volume 120 is equivalent to 61.8034%. This is a perfect value. If you can maintain this throughout your life, take it from me, thou shalt have no physical problem, no emotional problem, no mental problem, no religious problem, no spiritual problem, no problem of any nature at all. You can be as effective, as sharp, as intelligent, as intuitive in your 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 plus, just the way you are at your youth. That is the objective with which these videos have been made. Fifth concept is a cardiac output. As I told you, the amount of blood pumped by each ventricle of the heart every 1 minute. Calculation is stroke volume of 74 ml multiplied by heart rate of 70, 72, whatever it is, equivalent to 5 plus liters. This is the amount of cardiac output. Sixth concept is cardiac index, the cardiac output per square meter of the body. That could be around 3 liters per square meter. That's another quality which I want everybody to understand. These are the qualities which have to be understood completely when you come to the question of cardiac output. You have blood volume of 5 liters, pumped out 74 ml every stroke, 70 thing, and you can be perfectly normal from every angle, hemoglobin concentration, perfect anatomy, perfect physiology, perfect chemistry, perfect psychology, all would be in place if these values are maintained one. And that is why I want this to be given an emphasis. If you can maintain this cardiac output, like your blood pressure, like your heart, and what we are going to talk in the next few things, I can assure you, you should have no problem whatsoever to understand A to Z of the entire external world without any problem. You could be super conscious to the entire world. You will function from inside out as if you are part of everything, but you will still be separate, but still be aware of everything without being of any mental anxiety, emotional, other tension whatsoever. That is the reason I'm talking very clearly. This is how it should have been maintained. Now, having spoken about cardiac output, having spoken about end diastolic volume, and stroke volume, cardiac ejection fraction, cardiac index, etc., let's move on to the next stage, which is equally important to be understood. Ki what to be done and how to be done so that we can be in tune with nature, be as attentive, as alert, as super conscious as we want throughout your life, even when you are in hundreds. To understand cardiac cycle, as I've told you, the heart is designed with 4 chambers: atrium left, atrium right, ventricular left, ventricular right. Then you have 4 volumes. Blood from the external complete body through lower part comes through the inferior vena cava. From head and neck comes through the superior vena cava, gets into right atrium through the hole, and then blood transforms from right atrium into the right ventricle through tricuspid valve. From right ventricle it goes to the lungs, where carbon dioxide is thrown out and oxygen is taken, and oxygenated blood through the pulmonary vein comes to the left atrium. From there it travels to left ventricle, and through aortic it goes. There are 4 chambers also, 4 vehicles also, and that is the structure which I have spoken about it. Now, as far as the contraction is concerned, that is where cardiac cycle comes very important. Atrium has a different structure, ventricles have different structures. As far as atrium is concerned, atrial systole is 0.1 second out of 0.8 seconds, and the atrial diastole is 0.7 seconds out of 8. These two ratios are like Earth. Earth is made of 7 parts, so is atrium made of 7 parts. This is the core value which receives everything. Dynamism is not. Dynamism is done by ventricles, and ventricle have 2 parts, systole and diastole. Grossly you can say systole is made of 2 parts, or ventricle diastole is made of 3 parts, or you can say 3 parts of systole and 5 parts of ventricle, whichever it is. The ratio remains same, which is Divyank ratio. Ventricle systole is 0.3 out of 8, diastole is 0.5 out of 8. The ratio is Divyank. This is something which I want everybody to understand, and this is what it is. So atrial systole is 0.1 second, diastole is 0.7 seconds, ventricle systole is 0.3 seconds, ventricle diastole is 0.5. That is a perfect vehicle which we have to understand and remember. And picture has been given down how it actually functions and what are the ratios. From that angle, let's move on to the next stage. As I told you, cardiopulmonization, I am again and again talking about it. Mouth to mouth breathing or kiss of life does not help because there is no blood circulation. Without blood circulation, without cardiac output, oxygen cannot be absorbed from the lungs. There is no use giving oxygen to the lungs when blood is not in circulation. It has failed. I realize that even as a medical student, and I am happy that I stick to that even today. How they survive and what happens, I am not going to detail. With concept does not agree, and that's it. But perfect is to raise the legs, let blood from lower legs come to the heart. That's the reason SA node is presented in the right atrium, close to where superior vena cava and inferior vena cava can bring the blood there. Stimulus for the 5th level of cardiovascular system, which is SA node, sinoatrial node in the right ventricle, is by blood pressure of the venous return, which is important. Increasing venous return, increasing blood pressure, stimulating this and starting heart is more important. From that point, cardiac output of 0.5, whatever the ratio may be, is important for starting the heart again. If that fails, you can do the contraction, bring the blood circulation and then start. It could. Otherwise put ventricles, atrium and other thing and make sure that it can work to start the heart beating once again, that you can get into the heart contraction systematically, step by step. So having explained that, let's move on to the next slide. As I told you, this is also a concept which is also closely associated with the heart structures, contractions, cardiac cycle, cardiac output, cardiac volume, and things. From that, the P wave is atrial systole, when blood which is collected from the entire body, which comes to the atrium left and right, is pushed into the ventricles during this phase, which is 0.1 second out of total 1.8 seconds. And that's why P wave can be seen in the beginning. And this is followed by ventricular systole, when ventricles start contracting, and Q, R, S complex and T happens during that particular period. And that is where it is associates with that. Let's not confuse with all the scientific things which they are talking about. Let it be as simple. And this is followed by ventricular diastole, when the heart is relaxing. Atrium is also in diastole, that's also relaxed, and the whole structure takes place beautiful. And what is the carry home message in this particular thing is, systole is 38.1966%, diastole is 61.8034%. If this is maintained, this structure is maintained, I can assure you, you will have no problem whatsoever with respect to the heart for the rest of your life. Whatever may have happened, this particular thing in L2 should be maintained for the rest of your life. If you can maintain this, you are through to a beautiful life and live as long as you want. You can have the blood volume 5 liters and 74 ml to be the ejection stroke volume, and 70, and that would make your life perfectly healthy, wealthy, wise and happy. So from that, this concept plays very, very important role. Now let's go to the next stage. As I have been saying, I suffered from first panic attack 40 years ago, and it was primarily because of sympathetic overactivity. When I got up at night, throat was hot, took cold water, it put the system out of gear, water was perfect, and sympathetic system had to rise to save me from what could have been problematic, increase the blood volume, increase the tension, increase the heat, and whatever cold had done, it neutralized, and I recovered at the earliest done with it. And that is where I want to bring again and again complete subject of Tantra Vidya, perfect human anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, psychology, and everything depending upon endocrine system, autonomic system, sympathetic, parasympathetic, all that fits into the place very clearly how it should be done, so that we should suffer no problem whatsoever. As long as we want to live, we should live a perfectly healthy. For that, perfect diet control, perfect exercise, perfect control, perfect A to Z in every way is absolutely essential, and that is what I tried to project in this particular picture. Ki what is sympathetic nervous system? Its role to preserve us come what may. Prime function of parasympathetic system is to rest, digest, conserve energy for future, and sympathetic system is to mobilize that we sympathize with us and we can survive whenever the problem comes, and that is the reason that energy is used during emergency, and that's it. Once that is understood, we know when to switch it on sympathetic, when to switch it on parasympathetic, when to have the balance. A balance of both to have a perfect homeostasis is absolutely essential to lead a perfectly healthy, wealthy, wise, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, integrated life. From that angle, now let's move on to the next style. What it is? I have told you heart, GIT and uterus are the one which are the fifth level of nervous system, which can be independent of subconscious, unconscious, conscious or superconscious. These people can work independent of the pacemakers in the heart, in the digestive system and uterus, even when rest of the system fail in unconscious states. And that is beauty which I have over again I've been trying to bring. This should have been taught to all the students from school, college to university, which they don't. We are making khichdi of everything. We should make perfect amrit or nectar or complete, which can be used 100% all the time, and that's what I'm trying to do. Now, since sympathetic, this particular thing is beyond the sympathetic and cardiac, plus a combination of both is there. So right vagus is connected with SA node, and entire sympathetic and parasympathetic also associated, and then you have 10 stages of conducting system which maintains different thing. Even everything fails, this will still maintain wherever the concentration is. If there is a block before SA node, heart rate increases to 100, but if it is SA node and beyond, it can come down to 61.8, then lower, and you can still have a ventricular escape. As a result, you could lead a perfectly healthy life without any problem whatsoever. If that can be done, I can assure you, you lead a perfectly healthy, wealthy, wise and happy life. From that angle, this particular projection makes sense why nature has provided 10 stages of conducting system in the heart to make sure without the heart we cannot live, without water we cannot live, without blood we cannot live, without digestive system we cannot live. So focus on the heart, cardiopulmonary functions on this side. That's what I gave you the CPR to understand. That is important. This is important. This is important. If all that is understood, I think we had absolutely no problem to keep it in mind that as long as heart size is normal, anatomy is normal, physiology is normal, biochemistry is normal, psychology is important, and you can lead perfect physical health, emotional health, mental health, wealth, wisdom, long life, very productive, very useful to self as well as the world. That is what this is all about. Having understood this, now let's go to the next slide. As usual, this is the last slide, but now since I do have a time, I can speak little more about this and its association with Anahata chakra, which is the heart chakra. And maybe people do believe heart is the center of soul consciousness. Many Upanishads do talk about the size of soul is like a thumb. That also makes it clear it could be 22/7, which is pi, and I think I have no issues with that. If that can make that heart survive, we can survive. So one of the soul consciousness with the heart, I have no issues whether it is a indwelling human soul or some other thought process. If it can be maintained, I think we should have a perfectly no problem whatsoever. Having done that, now if focus in heart is to make sure that we are totally in autonomic nervous balance, no over sympathetic, no over parasympathetic. Have food, relax for some time, digest the food, rest, and then go on to add as we go one by one. If we can do that one by one over a period, I can assure you we'll have no problem whatsoever for rest of life to lead a perfectly healthy, wealthy, wise, happy life. And that's how I see, that's how we have been able to do, and I'm able to live my life even in my 70 plus as effectively as was I was in my 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s and 60s. As a matter of fact, because of diet control, regular exercises and keeping the mind, everything under control, without fluctuating, without letting anything from the external world disturb me, with the help of 10 stages yoga, I've been able to balance the external world completely. I can see be a part of it, but I'm unaffected by it. I function from inside out, and when you function from inside out, your mind is under control, your thoughts are under control, you don't suffer from any kleshas which are by and large known as Kundalini syndromes, which are associated with fluctuations of the mind. And once that can be avoided, you can have a lead. And from that angle, mind and heart are very closely associated. So whenever I think of the mind, I always associate with heart. As long as heart is normal, you have no problem, you can maintain it, you can lead a perfectly healthy, wealthy, wise and happy life. That's why the focus on mind is very clear in Akhand Yoga, also in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. All the process of yoga in all the books in India very clearly keep your mind under control and you should have no problem whatsoever. From that angle, I would say what I have shared here is the kind of wisdom which everybody should know. If your mind is under control, is not fluctuating, you'd have a perfect heart functioning, contraction and relaxation, cardiac output, cardiac volume, cardiac cycle, blood pressure, all the parameters which are associated with the heart, everything should be as perfect as Divyank. It's not only in your 20s, in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. And one parameter which plays very important role, again and again I am saying, it's water. Water, chronic dehydration is called aging. If you don't want to age, you want to reverse aging, all you need to do is make sure that your water content is normal, water content is normal, blood volume is normal, stroke volume is normal, everything is cardiac output is normal, you should have no problem whatsoever. That's the reason I'm talking about this can be done with the help of perfect diet control, perfect exercises, perfect yogic parampara, perfect life, being enlightened from A to Z with Divyank ratio, Divyank sequence is very important to be perfectly physically, emotionally, mentally and spiritually integrated. That's the reason this particular picture becomes very important, where I'm able to show ancient Indian wisdom as well as the modern Western science have the same picture beautifully described. Anyway, it was lovely talking to you. So it has been pleasurable. So thank you very much.